We are here at Idaho State University chatting with Governor Brad Little. Governor, you're on this side of the state today to make an announcement about the big issue that everyone's been talking about, water and the curtailment and whatnot. What can you tell me about this announcement?
The Water Board, which is diverse from a regional standpoint all over the state, surface water, groundwater, municipalities. The Water Board we've done $500 million worth of projects from one end of the state to the other, but mainly over here in this part of the state. They've always got more projects than they have resources for. We had another project in the state that was not going to be as necessary as this one. So I basically am taking $10 million from that project and I'll give it to the Water Board to maximize what we need to do for recharge to address the aquifer issue here in this part of the state.
Okay, so $10 million that would have been used elsewhere will come to Eastern Idaho to help.
On top of all the other money we've invested in recharge.
Okay, so this will go specifically to the recharge.
Well, that's we have a high level of confidence that that's where the Water Board will direct the revenues.
And what does that mean for the average person watching?
Well, we've been doing investments in recharge for a long time, and that's how we mitigated some of the negative effects to the aquifer. Is all over. I did a project I think a year ago in up by Ryrie where we put in we dug a pit. It's in a real leaky area, and we'll fill it shoulder season full of water, and it will go into the aquifer. We've put water out in canals during the shoulder season. We've done a lot of recharge, and as the technology gets better, we know where it works. We've done some water projects where we take water out of the river, put it in an area, and it goes right back into the river. That doesn't make very good sense. But we're learning more about the geology and the hydrology of the state, and then we can more effectively stop that depletion of the aquifer that's been taking place.
What is the latest on the negotiations between the parties? You've given them the October 1st deadline. What do we know? What's the latest?
Well, everything I'm hearing from the parties, surface water, groundwater, is they're getting really close. I'm very pleased with the progress they've made.
And is it close to an agreement that all parties agree with, that they're happy with?
Yes. Well, if it's an agreement, it's all parties aren't euphoric, but that's what an agreement is.
Right.
Is that whether it's a senior, junior, groundwater, surface water, everybody, and usually for those things to work, people have to compromise, and that's what it's going to be. And to my knowledge, nobody thinks it's not workable and doable and implementable.
And long term?
Yes.
I mean, or is this something that in a year?
But no. I've done that. I'm not doing that again.
Right.
It's going to be over a long period of time. But we all recognize that we learn how we model water. We learn how the aquifer reacts. We learn how we manage storage in our reservoirs. We learn how we, what we do for spring flows, what we do for winter flows. So we want to recognize that. We recognize that irrigators are getting more efficient all the time. The incidental recharge is going down. We realize that we have wet years and dry years. And so in the wet years, we'll make a little progress. In dry years, we want to hold our own and have a shock absorber for it. That's a lot of what's been taking place over the last 6 months.
Now, had the curtailment gone into effect, what do you think the economic result would have been?
It would have depended upon the magnitude of the curtailment. There was an agreement in 2016 about if this doesn't happen, this happens. And that's what the curtailment was. Everybody knew that was not workable, that there were some people that have been doing the right thing all along that were going to get, because of where they were in their situation, what was going to happen to them. That the curtailment order was basically a call for people to get together. We got to resolve this issue. We know the aquifer is going down. We know that we have to have water for these critical part of agriculture, and we got there. So there was actually an agreement in early May to where everybody had kind of agreed on what we're going to do, and then different parties kind of went to their corner, and instead of agreeing on what they agreed to in May, they went further apart, and that led to the call. But we're in a good place now.
So as a farmer yourself,
right?
I mean, I guess you kind of see this from all sides. Would that be right to say?
That would be very fair.
And what do you say to the farmers here that say we're not being heard?
If they're not being heard, I don't know who's on the other end of the phone when I call and talk to them all the time. Last time I was in this building, I met with a lot of them in the room next door when we did the executive order. Lieutenant Governor Bedke's been over here, and Jamie, one of my staff members, have been over here day after day after day after day. But it wasn't like I wasn't listening before. I was saying, you need to come to an agreement. As the Director of Water Resources said, that we were operating under the 2016 agreement, and he said it has not aged well. We see the problems in that old agreement, and we need to fix it, and that's what's taken place.
It definitely has got people paying attention this year versus, in 2016 or previous years. Has it also been able to expose ways that maybe we can waste less water?
We're going to do many things. The biggest thing is we recognize that we have wet years and dry years in Idaho. And you got to realize that when we did the agreement in 2016, the next year was 2017, the biggest snowfall year in recorded history in Idaho. We all patted ourselves on the back that we're brilliant water managers. I think the good Lord had a lot more to do with it than we did. And so it took a while for us to realize that there were some of the things that were agreed to in 2016 that just flat weren't workable. They weren't fair. I think we've addressed almost all of them. Nobody is going to be 100% happy with it, but I think there's enough people that are going to be 90% plus happy with it that it's going to be a good agreement going forward.
The other issue, though, that might be raised as well as wasting water is, can we sustain the number of farms we have now in 50 years?
Yes.
We can. And not have to do curtailments?
No, it wouldn't be a curtailment, but we'll have to manage it different. Water Basin 38, which is the Wood River Valley, they went through this in a smaller area just 2 years ago. And in that area, there was a curtailment order. They shut their pumps off. They said, well, that's not going to help the people downstream. In 2 days, the people downstream got the water that had been their water by a senior water right. They got together and agreed. There's some areas where they're doing different cropping than they were before. Everybody's still farming up there, but some of them are using a little less water. They're using it more efficiently. Some of the crops used a lot of water. They're growing on a smaller acreage, and I think that is a very sustainable model.
How involved was Idaho Power in all this?
Well, Idaho Power is just one of the many water users. There's the city of POCATELLO, where we're sitting right now. There's a lot of water users. The hydropower right on the Snake River is one of the oldest water rights, so they're obviously, but there are water right owners in the Idaho Falls area that have an older water right than Idaho Power. When this state was developed, one of the first things the pioneers did was start diverting water, and those are the oldest water rights in the state. That's part of the kind of misnomer about this issue, is it's one part of the state versus another part of the state. The issue is people with the longest water rights with people with the youngest water rights. And we can still make that work if everybody works together. We're still going to recognize that if you got two children and you've got a farm and you like one better than the other one, believe me, give the one you like the best the oldest water right.
Okay, so you're confident that in about a month from now, a little over a month from now, that a resolution will have been reached, an agreement between the two parties that the Department of Water Resources can then sign off on, administer it, and it'll be long-term. And
as I said at one of the water events, what happens if it doesn't snow? what happens if it doesn't snow for 2 years? Now, I would pray to God that that doesn't happen. But if it's dry, if we have predictable dry years and we have predictable wet years, this model will basically accommodate that. We're going to learn more about efficiency in irrigation. We're going to learn more about the hydrology. We're going to learn more about how weather patterns affect. We're going to learn more about the consumption of crops. So if it's a good model, like any other model, it'll adapt going forward. But I think people are comfortable with where it is for the near future.
And you've said, I think from the beginning, at least as of a few months ago, that you want everybody to resolve, all the parties resolve it themselves. You don't want to step in and say, do it this way.
Yes.
Because the Supreme Court prevents you from doing that?
Well, state law.
State law.
It's in the Constitution, it's in state law. But more importantly, in the states where they haven't done that, in Texas and 2 other states, the U.S. Supreme Court stepped in. In Colorado, Utah, California, other state courts and federal courts. That's what I tell everybody is the absolute worst case scenario, is a federal judge, the Environmental Protection Agency, somebody else intervenes. If the water quantity goes way down and you have clean water violations in rivers and reservoirs and wildlife habitat, then it opens the door for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries, or the Environmental Protection Agency to tell Idaho how to manage their water. That's why I want us all to get together and agree on that. Because I can tell you the people that I've had robust arguments with, they may have an issue with their senior water right or their junior water right, but they all agree that we are better deciding this than the federal government, particularly the Environmental Protection Agency.
I have a couple questions on other issues.
Okay.
Did you have anything that you wanted to add on water?
No, we're excited for this announcement. I don't want to say I'm 100% certain this is going to happen because that's what negotiations are, but I can tell you the trend line of where the 2 groups were when they started and where they are now is a very conducive trend line.
All right. I want to ask you about Thomas Creech and his execution that did not happen a few months ago.
Okay.
Where do things stand there?
Well, it's going through the process. The Department of Corrections is working on new protocols. I don't think they've released them yet that will address some of the issues that we had with Mr. Creech's execution.
Is that something that they do solo, or do they consult with you?
No, they do it solo, but they are governed by the Board of Corrections. I appoint the Corrections Board, but obviously the director is part of my cabinet, and my counsel to them is the death penalty is part of the law of the land in Idaho. Do it with the maximum amount of dignity you possibly can and get it accomplished. I am, like everybody else, frustrated with how long it takes for us to, because we've got other ones that are hanging out there about how long it takes and how much it costs, but those are all a result of federal court orders.
Right. Do you foresee a firing squad facility being built in Idaho?
Well, that law is available.
Right.
But the department has been successful at getting lethal injection. So the issue is who are the volunteers that have to do that for the Department of Corrections, and we want the maximum amount of dignity for the person that's executed. I'm not quite as concerned, but particularly for the whole system.
Okay.
For prosecutors, for people at corrections, for the family members, we want to maintain some level of dignity as we fulfill that probably grimmest of government jobs they have to do.
Yeah. So do you know if we could see him put to death this year, this calendar year?
I don't know, but I would think that that's maybe within reason, but sometimes these things take a lot longer than, and are a lot more costly than we anticipate.
Yeah. It's back to school time. Your thoughts, could Idaho be doing more for our teachers? I know in Idaho Falls, at least where we're based, there's not necessarily a teacher shortage, but there's bus drivers they're looking out for, substitute teachers. I imagine that's an issue statewide. Could more be done for these school districts to help with these issues?
Of course, we did a big thing. Representative Furness was a big part of it when we made available to school districts not only discretionary money for the certified staff and the non-certified staff, but also for health insurance. Your school administrators will tell you that was a big, big help. Our launch initiative, we've got a lot of kids that are interested in going into the teaching profession, and that is a very critical and important thing. You gotta fill up the pipeline, but everybody's having trouble finding help, so we're kind of victims of our own success in that area.
What would you say to kids starting school? What advice do you have for them?
Work hard, find something you're passionate about, and pursue that passion. We have the fastest growing personal incomes of Idaho of any state, and we want to make it to where if you want to be the best auto technician, the best teacher, the best nurse, the best doctor, the best journalist, that there's an opportunity for you here in Idaho.
You just called me the best journalist, so I appreciate that.
I did. I'm capable of sucking up.
Right. Well, thank you, Governor.